Call to order, July 24th, 2020, meeting of the Indian River County Planning and Zoning Board. Pledge allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Are there any additions or deletions to the agenda?
None here.
Okay.
Mr. Chair, if I could just real quick,
Yes.
we have Beth Mitchell and Jordan Stewart and the non-voting school board, Terry Berenborg on the conference call.
Thank you. Okay, approval of the minutes.
Motion for approval.
Second.
Okay. Motion to approve, seconded. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. All opposed? Yes, Mr. Howe passed the motion, and Mr. Landers seconded it, just so you have that on the record. All right, next item on the agenda. Jacob Allenbaugh's appeal of a decision by the County Development Director, the construction of a residence on the property at 6390 77th Street with a legal non-conforming 500-foot tall communication tower is not allowed under county regulations 980-30058-86943, and this matter is quasi-judicial. Have any of the members had ex parte communications?
None.
None? Anybody who'd like to speak on this matter, please stand up now and be sworn in.
Do you swear or affirm to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth? Thank you.
All right, this time I'll turn it over to staff.
Thank you. Let's see here if I can get my master controls not wanting to let me go back. All right. Thank you, Mr. Chair. For the record, I'm Ryan Sweeney, Chief of Current Development with the Indian River County Community Development Department. I'm not trying to pull up my staff presentation here. Close. It won't close. There we go.
Okay.
There we go. Thank you. Apologize for that. Again, for the record, I'm Ryan Sweeney, Chief of Current Development with the County Community Development Department. Tonight we have an appeal of the Community Development Director's decision, and the appellant is Jacob Allenbaugh. The project site is located at 6390 77th Street, which is on the north side of 77th Street, east of 66th Avenue, and it's just west of the Indian River County Humane Society site. Here's an aerial depicting the existing conditions of the site, including the tower itself, which is essentially centralized to the site, and again, the Humane Society to the east and other surrounding properties. So a background on how we got here, or starting with, is the existing site contains a plus or minus 500-foot tall radio communications tower. That tower was approved by special exception approval by the Board of County Commissioners on February 6, 1990. In 1997, the county land development regulations were amended, and commercial communication towers taller than 150 feet are no longer allowed within the A1 zoning district at all, therefore they're prohibited. That makes this site a legal non-conforming site with a 500-foot tower, and the appellant would like to purchase the site, keep the tower in place, and lease it back to the tower operator and construct a single-family home on the site and some related accessory structures. Under the previous 1990 approval, the tower was subject to either a 100% or 110% of tower height setback or a designed fall radius, which in this case, the tower was engineered to have a designed fall radius of 200 feet, so essentially it collapsed on itself within a 200-foot radius. The current setback for existing or under construction residential dwellings for a tower now is 300% of the tower height. So in this case, 1,500 feet. And just to add a little perspective, the parcel size is 17.8 acres. The dimensions are roughly 663 feet by 1,185 feet. So you can't meet that dimension in any way, shape, or form based on the site dimensions. And so adding a residential dwelling to the existing site would fail to meet the current setback, and in staff's opinion would increase the degree of nonconformity of the site. It should be noted that surrounding properties are allowed to construct a residential dwelling within the setback because they do not own or control the tower site and cannot control the nonconforming status of the site. Timeline on how we arrived here. Back in October 30 of 2018, staff provided a formal zoning verification letter, response letter to the applicant or the appellant's first inquiry. At that time, no fall zone information was provided, so the default was that the proposed residential dwelling would need to meet the 300% tower height setback. Again, that couldn't be met, still cannot be met. On January 10th, 2019, staff provided a follow-up email. We did confirm that the 200-foot design fall radius was a part of the original approval. In the initial letter, staff could not find the report, but we did find the report and the 200-foot design fall radius. However, staff did confirm also that the current 300% setback still applies and the site is non-conforming. Constructing a residential dwelling would increase the non-conformity. January 30, 2019, staff provided a second follow-up email reaffirming that adding a residential dwelling would increase the nonconformity, and increasing nonconformities are not allowed under Chapter 904 of the county LDRs. On March 12, 2020, staff provided a correspondence reaffirming staff's position yet again, and this time identifying the appellant's right to appeal and establishing the appeal window from the date of letter, basically saying this is our absolute final decision and the appeal window starts now. And on April 3rd, 2020, the appeal was filed within the 21-day window. There have been some delays based on coronavirus, some challenges, and so especially during the March and April, getting the appeal submitted, processed, the appellant had a little bit of a challenge getting the application signed by the landowner, but they did secure that signature as well. So there's been a little hiccups, understandably, so now we're here in July. The appeal criteria outlined in LDR section 90207, which is the criteria for an appeal of the County Community Development Director, outlines 3 items. Number 1, did the reviewing official fail to follow the appropriate review procedures? If so, what procedural error was made? Staff provided information, conducted additional research and analysis, and rendered an official determination several times, but most notably in the March 12th, 2020 letter. And the appellant has not raised an objection to the procedural items. Appeal criteria number 2, did the reviewing official fail to properly interpret or apply the applicable zoning district regulations? If so, what error in interpretation or application of zoning district regulations was made? Staff interpreted and applied the appropriate zoning district regulations, most notably Chapter 904, which is the requirements of nonconformities, and Section 971.44, parentheses 1, which is the requirement for commercial communications towers. The appellant disagrees with the application of the 300% tower height setback requirement and would like to apply the 200-foot design fall setback, which was under the previous LDRs and the 1990 approval prior to the 97 LDR change. And appeal criteria number 3, did the reviewing official fail to properly evaluate the application or request with respect to the comprehensive plan and land development regulations of Indian River County? If so, what error was made in evaluating the application or request with respect to the comprehensive plan policy or land development regulations? Again, staff applied both comprehensive plan policies and land development regulations. The most notable comprehensive plan policy, 10.1, which deals with nonconformities, and this was bolded in your staff report. Policy 10.1 states that all new development, even development associated with nonconforming structures, must meet current regulations. Emphasis added through the bolding. Also, again, the land development regulations, which implement the policies of the comprehensive plan, include Chapter 904 for nonconformities, specifically not making a site more nonconforming, and again, Section 97144, which are the current communication towers requirements. And with that, staff's recommendation is that the Planning and Zoning Commission make a finding that excuse me, staff's determination did not fail any of the 3 areas outlined in LDR section 90207 parentheses 4, and deny the appeal and wholly affirm staff's determination. Thank you.
Any questions of staff?
If you go back, please, this is Harry speaking. Would you mind going back to, I think it was your second point? Did you say that the county did or did not indicate that a 200-foot fall radius was something to bring into the calculation of whether this was something that was a nonconformity or not?
Mr. Chair, Mr. Howell, in the original letter back in October 30th, 2018, staff could not locate the staff report in the original letter, so the default was to go to the 300% tower setback. In January 2019, staff did find the staff report. It was over in archives in a different building, and we were able to confirm that it was designed for a 200-foot design fall radius. So that information was provided, not with the initial letter, but, soon thereafter.
Thank you.
Any further questions?
I've got a couple of questions. First of all, the provision that was in place back in 1990, did that differentiate between residences or other buildings? Because I'm looking at our 1997 ordinance, which currently applies, and that creates that 300% with respect to residences. So my first question is the 1990 standards, do you know if that differentiated? Or was that simply a setback requirement for all?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Alan, if you look at it's pretty far back in the staff report, but I'm sorry? Yeah, it's attachment 5, and specifically it's the criteria, the special exception criteria outlined in that 1990 staff report. It's basically, I'll just read it verbatim. In no case shall the fall radius, parentheses, 110% of height or other approved design fall radius encroach upon existing off-site structures or residentially zoned property. So it was specific to any structure or residentially zoned property.
And just so I understand, one of the issues that we have anyways, the current ordinance provides that you can't have you can't have a residence within 300% of the tower height of at least this tower. Is that for safety purposes? The fear that the tower is going to go down or blow around in a high wind? What's the reason for that? In this case, it would translate out to a 1,500-foot setback.
Mr. Chair, Alan, I believe under the current regulations, it's 300% of the tower height of any communications tower in excess of 150 feet.
Okay.
I would say partly due to safety, but also just by aesthetics and impacts of having a tower of that height that close to a residence for other compatibility purposes.
As that is applied to our case here, it prohibits structures within that I'll say the 1,500-foot radius.
Residential dwellings.
Residential dwellings, only if they're on the same property as the tower is on. And if there's adjoining property within the 1,500 feet, someone can build a residence on that property. Is that correct?
Right. Yes, Mr. Chair, Alan, the way we've applied it is because they don't control the non-conforming site, we can't penalize them for properties that they don't own or control.
Mm-hmm.
So we would not apply the setback retroactively to the tower on adjacent properties.
And Bill, I'm assuming from the fact that you signed the memo that from a legal standpoint, you are agreeing with staff's conclusions that the current land development regulations applied to this particular fact situation do not allow the construction of a residence on the property owner's property here.
Yeah.
Same property as the tower is located on.
For the record, Bill DeBrawl on behalf of the County Attorney's Office, that's correct. I liken this to a parcel on 66th Avenue. Zoning there is agricultural, 1 unit per 5 acres. There are several lots that have less than 5 acres. We still allow development on those lots, but they can't make it larger. They couldn't add to the existing structures. That's what we have. And through the eminent domain process, we have allowed those to combine lots and build a new structure with the thought behind that, or with the thinking of that they're making a larger lot and lessening the amount of the nonconformity.
And this property that we're talking about, I guess it's not possible to simply cut off a piece of that property, transfer it into a different owner, and now that different owner can build within the 1,500-foot radius.
At this point, I would say no, because the nonconformity exists to that parcel.
And the way in which it's zoned, too.
That's correct.
Okay. That's all I have.
Any other questions?
Yes, please.
Go ahead.
So several questions. One was regarding a lot split. I mean, if both of those parcels conform, then the one parcel, yes, is non-conforming, but the other parcel would be able to be built on. In my understanding of lot splits and my understanding of, I mean, the parcel that's non-conforming is non-conforming. So I'm not wondering why a lot split wouldn't be possible. But I'm also reading that there was an existing house on the property and there was a demo permit on it in 2005. Is that accurate?
That is correct. Well, let's answer the first question before I answer the second. Mr. Chair, Mr. Landers, the lot split question, again, that's more a function of, are you going to meet your A1 dimensional criteria? You're basically essentially just under 5 acres, your lot frontage. Is that going to work with how the tower is designed with the, there's footers, it's hard to, maybe hard or not hard to make out, but there's 3 guide poles where the anchors are for the tower. So that's something that we would ultimately have to look into. I still think that would be making the tower site more non-conforming. You'd be dropping below. There's also a minimum size requirement, even under the original approval. I believe it's a 20-acre minimum. But to answer your second question, which escaped me now, remind me the second question. Oh, the home. Yes, there was a home on the site and was demoed in, I believe, 2005. Yes. But once a nonconformity goes away, you can't reestablish it.
And the tower is now leased back to the existing owner?
Mr. Chair, Dr. Day, the tower owner owns the property. The tower operator owns the whole property.
Okay.
At least that's my understanding.
Correct. The applicant hasn't purchased the property yet.
Correct.
Any further questions?
None here.
Yes, I have a question. Is it common for us to consider a matter like this when the applicant or the appellant is not the owner of the property?
Beth, thank you for the question. I'm going to have Bill weigh in on that.
Yes, Ms. Mitchell, that's a good question. Frequently, we will have rezoning considerations brought before the board by an applicant who has a contract for purchase of the property that is contingent upon the rezoning. That's quite common. The owner, by signing the contract, gives permission for the developer to move forward with the proposed rezoning. If the rezoning is granted, the sale goes through. If it doesn't, the sale doesn't go through. So yes,
Okay.
That's quite common.
Okay, thank you.
Anything further?
So just, I'm skipping ahead here. Just to be clear, we allow for buildings outside of the parcel to be under 1,500 feet, and we allow for, to meet, tell me if I'm wrong, please, to meet current code, we do consider the fall radius. Does that supersede the 300%?
Mr. Chair, Mr. Howley, your first question, yes, we would allow an adjacent property owner who does not have ownership or control of the non-conforming site to build a residential structure within the 1,500-foot fall radius. The current code is the 1,500-foot fall radius. The 200-foot design radius was under a prior approval.
Got it.
That's gone away.
Okay, thank you.
That doesn't mean that the tower isn't, based on 1989 engineering, designed to fall in a 200-foot radius. But based on our code, we don't consider that for a tower of this scale.
Sure, thank you.
Any further questions?
I guess just a previous recollection is we had, where the county had modified the codes and setback requirements, it's been a couple, 3 years ago anyways, regarding the couple that had wanted to extend their pool deck. And the county had had enforced a new code that wouldn't allow them to do that. Well, isn't that necessarily applicable in this case with the fall ratio and the 300%?
Right. Mr. Chair, Mr. Landers, you're specifically referring to essentially a non-conforming situation that was created due to a county initiated rezoning. So that was not the applicant's doing. And so we did create a very narrowly written allowance for that screen enclosure to meet essentially a non-conforming setback. But that was based on a county initiated rezoning, not an applicant. In fact, this site, just to be clear, rezoned from RS3 to A1 in 1990 in order to get the tower approval. So they actually brought that upon themselves, if you will.
Any further questions?
You are going to allow the appellant
Would
is
the
here.
applicant like to come forward and speak?
Good evening, everybody. Thank you so much
Evening.
for all giving me your undivided attention. I feel pretty special. So, I guess first off, I totally understand the planning department's point of view on all this, and I think what drove us to do the appeal was, I guess what you'd say, the initial intent of writing the section 971.44, and I don't feel it's necessarily written precise enough, I guess. And to me, it feels like it was written to regulate the construction of new towers more than someone building a house near an existing tower. And so I'm here just by where we have the 66th Avenue label here on the left side of the picture. That's my home there, and I'm within the 300% fall radius, and I'm all about it in that scenario. If I was there and this company wanted to build a tower where this one's at, I'd be all for not letting them do it, because I wouldn't want that, potential impact to my property value and all that type of stuff. But in this case, we have engineering on file, and I obviously don't care that the tower's there. I want to give my kids a bigger place to grow up and live and whatnot. It seems like that rule was written more to regulate towers being constructed. So that's the base of my appeal, and it seems like the wording, if you go and read it exactly, seems to be intended for where it says it has to be located that percentage from existing or structure under construction, which seems to me not specifically spelling it out, but saying you can't build a tower. So that is my argument, I guess, and basis of my appeal.
Gentlemen, do you have any questions of the applicant?
Yeah, which parcel is yours now? You said to the left?
Yes, right here. Yep.
Okay.
Down one a little bit. Yeah, that one right there. Yeah, so that's all me right there. So I'm within my house and my barn there and all. It's all within the new fall radius, and I can see the tower plain as day, and the strobe lights light up my property at night and all that. And if I, was there now and they wanted to build a tower now, I'd be all about this new setback, because it's obviously not that great for my property going forward. But it doesn't bother me, obviously, to move over there now that it's there.
And is the sale of the current parcel we're talking about pending the outcome of the appeal?
Yeah, I don't have any paperwork with those guys. I reached out to them because, we love the area we're in, and there's not a lot of property left, and, that one actually has some natural foliage on it and all that, and just said, hey, what's going on with this thing, and can I buy it? And they said, yeah, we need the tower still, you know, I'm not gonna get any income from it, but they need access and all that, and agreed on a price. And I said, you know, I'm pretty young, I don't know how to deal with all this, let me go down to the county and make sure that if I do buy it, I can actually move there. And so that's, you know, we're on a handshake agreement now where it's just, if I can get approval to move there, then I'll buy it. And obviously it checks out as far as environmental stuff and all that type of thing. But we ran into this issue pretty much right away, so haven't really proceeded any further.
Have they given you, have you asked them when that tower might need to be decommissioned? Because it's 30 years old already.
Yeah, I said that, you know, if it ever goes out of service, I want to take it down right away. And they said, nah, I don't know about that. You know, we can put a time frame in there, but I think they do some shortwave stuff maybe for emergency responders on there and FM. And I don't know what it costs to build one of those things, but I'm pretty sure they want to keep it as long as they possibly can in case some new type of communication comes up. But I did, you know, they did illustrate what, you know, AM would require to put on that tower, and which is pretty substantial. And I said, no way, you know, it's basically what's there now is all that can be there going forward if I own it.
So I'm just going to get a little bit personal for a second, and I apologize. Why push so hard for a piece of property that's non-conforming? And it looks to me like you got a nice piece of property where you are now that would probably, unless it's within that fall radius that we were talking about, 300%.
Yeah, and until now, I didn't actually think about how that would impact us going forward. So we came across that property, my wife did, before we got married, and it has a little, basically what was intended to be a mother-in-law suite here down right close to the end.
Mm-hmm.
So it's around 1,000 square feet or so. We bought that before we got married. We've had 2 kids since. It's a gorgeous house, but there's nowhere to really expand. You see how close we are to 66.
Mm-hmm.
I have 5 acres and I live right next to 66. It doesn't really make a lot of sense. And also with the kids and the dogs, it's definitely a legitimate concern to me now how easy they can get out on that road. So, you know, my only option now with that is to build kind of right where the 9 is on my property. And to be honest, I don't have a use for a mother-in-law. I can't really afford it. The property's heavily landscaped and it's beautiful, but it just doesn't really fit our lifestyle anymore. And we want to farm more, and I'm not going to rip all that, you know, landscaping up to do that. And so it's just the family's grown, and to give my kids 18 acres to roam on would be
Not much use for a mother-in-law or a mother-in-law suite.
No, I don't know. I think
Like I said, I don't want to get you in trouble if I'm asking some.
no. I talked. I talked to Ryan a little bit about that, and I think it's over the conforming size for something like that, and it has to be seasonal, and it's just, you know, it's just a lot of hoops to jump through, and it would be a beautiful migration just to go over there and put a house on the back, you know, outside of the design fall radius, and have, like I said, give my kids that kind of property where they could run a long ways in either direction. I don't have to worry about them going in a road and all that. We spent a good amount of time out there the last year just checking it out, and it'd be really cool to be able to be over there for them and for us, just for our kind of little farming ventures we want to do and stuff like that.
I appreciate you entertaining me and answering those questions.
Oh, it's no problem.
Thank you.
Any further questions?
I got Mr. Questions tonight for staff. Does anyone know how many parcels that are similar to this have towers on them that are kind of a similar situation in the county? I couldn't imagine there's many.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Mr. Howell, in this particular area, there's not very many at all. We had a different conversation about towers earlier today, but there's one at the corner of 66th Ave and 65th Street. It's not near as tall. To shortly answer your question, there's very few that are this tall in the county, period, much less in this area. There's a few that are maybe 100 feet tall, and that's about it.
So not to step on toes, because I mean, look, man, I know the staff's done their homework, but coming from 4 years at the city, you learn that, sometimes you just have to challenge staff, right? But I just wonder, the county commission could make a variance for this, right? Because we're talking about one house and not a community.
Could I point out one thing too? Real quick, I'm sorry I didn't bring it with me.
Sorry.
Do you happen to have it in your file, Ryan? So in this thing, I keep in touch with the company that owns it to let them know, because it's been a long time, and I gotta give them updates and say why I haven't, made a decision. And so, I told them what's going on. I said, look, they don't really care if they sell it or not. They have like 5,000 sites or whatever. But he said, listen, we run into this pretty regularly. We've had towers forever. Land becomes more valuable. People start looking for places to put buildings and stuff. And so they gave me a PowerPoint of like 20 or 30 slides, and there's one in Boca that's this height or bigger and has a bunch of nice new offices and stuff built like right on it and around it. And so they gave me that to say, show your county this, this is in your same kind of, I forget the wind
Wind
regulations.
Yeah, it's in your staff
It's in-
report.
Yeah.
It's in
So that's one to look at. I think that's really applicable that another county is letting happen, commercial property being built on and around that tower.
And the plan is that if you were to acquire this property, you would lease the tower back to the company that now owns it?
They do not want, they basically said, we want $200,000 for the property. That's probably about half what it'd be worth if it didn't have a tower on it right now. We keep the tower indefinitely, no income to you, but, no further expansion on the tower. So no AM, no different signals, nothing, that could impact you, but we get to keep the tower where it's at. We need access to it, that type of thing.
So is that unusual for a tower owner to have a tower on land that they don't own?
From my experience, Dr. Day, yes. There are several sites around the county where a tower is on county-owned property. I can think of one at Hobart Park, right off the top of my head, that is on county-owned property. And behind, or to the east of the city cemetery, west of the Publix, that is on city-owned property, so.
Any towers on privately owned property?
Yes, there are, but it's not at all uncommon to have it on governmental property. And to address Mr. Howell's point as far as what could the Board of County Commissioners do, I think just like they did previously a couple of years ago that we discussed, they could go ahead and amend the ordinance or direct staff to amend the ordinance to allow a structure to be built within the existing fall radius.
Thank you.
And regardless of the decision tonight, this is gonna go up to the county commission, right?
No.
No.
If you render a decision and it's not further appealed, then it's final. It would require further appeal by the appellant
To the county,
to the Board of County Commission.
Yeah.
So to answer Harry's question, that's probably, rather than go through a variance or a code amendment, it would probably just go through the further appeal process to get to the board. That would be the quickest way to get there.
I have a question, if that's okay. This is Terry Barenboard.
Go ahead, Terry.
Yeah, I was looking at this on the map. Have you looked at where school board property is located and how close is it to where this potential tower is going to be?
But no, this is an existing tower. But yeah,
Okay.
so the school board administration building is on 57.
Okay, that's what I thought. Okay, okay, that's fine.
Okay.
Question for staff regarding, the tower as it stands now is non-conforming, so if something happened to it from one of the storms or whatever may happen, they would not be allowed to rebuild the tower to the height that it is, correct? Or would they be allowed to rebuild it at all?
Mr. Chair, Mr. Landers, non-conforming towers can be replaced provided they don't increase see, that's a tricky question because they have to meet the current setback requirement. So the short answer is it would be a much shorter tower. A tower could be rebuilt, but it certainly won't be 500 feet. Because in that case, they would need to be 300% of the tower height to the nearest, yeah.
Hypothetically, if there's a house sitting there, i.e. Mr. Allenbaugh's house.
Right, they would render the tower completely.
Find the nearest structure and work backward 300%. Sorry, Phil Mattson. And that would be the height that you could build the tower to. Oh, I think I'm on. Sorry. But yes, you would basically back into what the allowable height would be given our current fall radius ordinance.
So, yeah.
But there was a house on the property. Was the house first or the tower first?
Mr. Chair, Mr. Landers, that I'm not sure of. I mean, the home was demoed in 2005. The tower was approved in 1990. I doubt the home was only there for 15 years, so I'm willing to venture a guess that it was there before the tower.
So they created the non-conforming at that.
No, under the previous allowances and the previous zoning, it met the requirements because of the 200-foot design fall radius. The home was outside of the 200-foot design fall radius.
But would that homeowner have been allowed to rebuild the house then, if there was a fire or whatever the case may be? That's kind of what I'm having an issue with, because if there was a house there,
Not after 1997 when the code changed. So there was a short window between 1990 and 1997 that the home could have been rebuilt and met the existing requirements.
Anything further? Nothing?
I'm sorry. Anything further on the folks on the phone?
Well, I guess
No,
one
I'm
thought
good.
I had was if we were to send this to the county commissioners and they went forward with it, and would say there was a storm and that tower was knocked down, and the tower owner could not rebuild due to the proximity of the house, could we get into legal trouble with the owner of that tower for making such a variance?
Well, like I said, I don't think it'd be a variance. I think it would be an amendment to the code.
Okay, that's what it'd have to be.
Problem is, if you make an amendment to the code, you're making an amendment to the code countywide, not just for this parcel.
That's correct.
Gotcha. Okay.
Yeah, in that same vein, Mr. Chair, that this is a very unique scenario with a number of different variables, and because of the twists and turns, it's unique to this site. I mean, the 500-foot tower is unique to most of the county, but I think that's how we arrived at kind of a very odd arrival of where we're at right now. But yeah, it is through a lot of twists and turns and changes over the past 30 plus years.
Anything further from the
I think
applicant?
I'd be inclined to kick this up to the county commission.
Yeah, we don't really necessarily desire the property like around the tower. So one thing I brought up is we could be treated as everyone else. So whatever the closest property line is, Kevin Lovely's property here is behind mine, the flag lot. He could build a house anywhere on that property, and that house would impact the tower if it fell down too. So we could be treated that way and be forced to build a house outside of his distance of property line or whatever it is. The big thing is just being able to give the kids that buffer zone is that we're after. So if it's dividing the property and only buy the back 5 acres with the right frontage on the road, driveway to get back there, I'm totally about that. And I'm not super interested in owning the property the tower itself is on, but we just want to be able to go over there somewhere and put a house there. So if we need to take it up further, I'm willing to do that. But
Thank you, sir. Would anybody else like to come forward and speak? No one? Okay. Well, gentlemen, can I have a motion?
I want to make a statement before, I'm happy to make a motion, but I want to see Mr. Allenbaugh have this property for one reason alone, and that's because I feel like the current code is constraining. We've got nearly 18 acres of property here that you can't build a single dwelling on. On the other hand, a good point was made, and we don't have to make this decision tonight, but county commission can make the decision. But what if that tower were destroyed by natural disaster or something else, and they were unable to rebuild the tower based on code? Well, presumably that code would have been changed and they could rebuild the tower. But let's say it creates some kind of conundrum where the tower owners could come back and sue the county. That's a concern of mine. So having said that, and I hate to kick the can, but my motion would be to allow the county commission to hear this case in the future and make their own decision.
I don't think that.
Would, I think what,
You're looking for a yes or no?
I think the board or the commission has to decide yes or no this evening as far as to grant the appeal or deny the appeal. If it would deny the appeal, I think it could direct staff to approach the board and apprise them of this situation and ask if a code change would be in order, or one of the things that the applicant could do would be to go ahead and approach the county commission, just as was done in the case of the landscaping on ag properties, and ask for a code amendment change to the land development regulations.
Let me ask you this, Bill. No matter what we do here this evening, this will go to the commission.
If
Because you're gonna have to have some sort of rule change to make this happen, won't we?
if P&Z wants to grant the appeal, they grant the appeal, and Mr. Allenbaugh would go on and do what he could with the current owner of the property. If it denies the appeal, Mr. Allenbaugh would then have the opportunity to take the appeal to the Board of County Commissioners.
I mean, we have an appeal in front of us, and we have to make a decision on that appeal. Now, beyond that, a path to the county commission is Mr. Allenbaugh can take an appeal of our decision to the county commission, and at the same time, working with staff, could look into that larger question of, beyond the appeal, can you consider at the same time, well, not necessarily at the same time, but you could go to the county commission and say, okay, we've got this issue that needs to be decided, but a secondary question to it is if you deny the appeal at the county commission level, then would you consider this larger issue of amending the ordinance to fit this specific situation? They could create an exception within the current ordinance that carves out the unique situation here, and there it could be. But the bottom line is we have an appeal in front of us, and we have to make a decision on that. We could make a recommendation beyond that if we wanted to, that the county commission consider this, but it's really Mr. Allenbaugh who's driving this train, because he may or may not want to push it up there.
That's absolutely correct, and I want to make another point clear too. We spoke about this a moment ago. If the county commission changes this, it's a code change, it's not a variance, so it's countywide. Am I correct?
That would be correct.
So it's countywide. I think the pitfall might be if the code were not changed in a correct manner, then worst case scenario, you might have subdevelopments being built underneath 500-foot towers, which would be extremely dangerous. And so that would be certainly, if the code were going to be changed, you'd have to account for things like that. It would have to be, again, it would have to be crafted very well. And that goes back to, I know the county has its best intentions when the code was amended in '97, but having an 18-acre parcel where you can't build a single dwelling just seems very constraining. So I guess then to further that, I would make a motion to grant the appeal.
I have a motion, Mr. Howell, to grant the appeal. Do I have a second?
I'll second that motion.
Seconded by Jordan. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed?
No.
Aye.
Aye.
So Beth and Jordan both voted aye?
Okay.
Aye.
Okay.
Aye.
So, okay, Beth and Jordan, Mr. Howell voted aye.
Correct.
Dr. Day, myself, Alan, and Chip all voted nay, so the appeal fails.
I'd make a motion to deny the appeal, and including in that is the findings that we're required to make. I would find that that staff did follow the appropriate procedure, that it did properly interpret and apply the zoning district regulations, and that it did properly evaluate the request with respect to the comprehensive plan.
Second.
And I'd make that motion with the notion that we could, having decided the appeal, we can decide whether we want to address any further issues about, would we like to see the county commission consider an amendment, you know? But at least I think we need to decide the appeal itself first.
Okay. Well,
So would you restate that motion, please?
Yes, I'd make a motion that we deny the appeal, and the ordinance requires that we make 3 specific findings. So those 3 specific findings, I would suggest we make is, yes, staff did follow the appropriate procedure. No, they did not fail. They did not fail to interpret or apply the applicable zoning district regulations, and they also did not fail to properly evaluate the application or request with respect to the comprehensive plan and the land development regulations. We have to make findings on those 3 issues.
I have a motion by Alan, seconded by Chip. All in favor?
Aye.
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 All opposed?
Aye.
Okay, it is,
Gordon and
Flip the vote.
and Hal are opposed. The remainder in favor.
5-2.
5-2.
Now, beyond that, I don't know if anybody wants to try to address that larger issue, you know, do we get involved at this point in whether the Board of County Commissioners should take a look at this situation and consider amending the regulations? I'll just throw that out there, otherwise I guess.
Again, how many 500-foot tall towers do we have in the county right now?
I don't have the, we have an inventory, I don't have the exact inventory in front of me, but it's not a lot.
Under 5, over 10?
If I can find,
I would bet there'd be a handful.
But that would be an answer that could come about if there is an appeal made.
Well, this is something I want to hear.
okay. So, okay, we've got our direction.
I mean, I do agree with Alan. I think this is something maybe the Board of County Commissioners should look at and maybe make some amendments, especially if there's not that many of these towers. I can't imagine 1,500-foot setback is really reasonable, especially when the tower is meant to fall at 200 feet. And even if you took that and divided it in half, 750 feet, that would probably still work for you, wouldn't it, in your case, or no?
Giving it a 150-foot fall radius?
Well, no, they've got a 200-foot fall radius on the tower currently, correct?
Correct.
How many feet would you actually need to be able to put your house in there? So say if they were at 300, 400, 500 feet?
I have a graphic in here on your packet, I think, of how we would subdivide it, and there's outside of the anchor points, which are about 550 feet, you can cut the back of the property off, give it, I think the minimum is a 60-foot wide driveway for frontage on the road, and that would meet A1 requirements for square footage. So that was kind of like my fallback is, like I said, I don't really desire to own the property the tower is actually on. It just happens to be all one piece. You know, I would put the house in the back, which would be, you know,
So realistically, we're at a 500-foot setback for the house. You're still 250% more than what the actual fall on the tower is. So, I mean, I think that's reasonable. Maybe that's something the county commission should look at, just my opinion.
And I would make the point that, and I think Bill hopefully would agree with this, but it's not unusual if Mr. Allenbar were to take an appeal to the county commission simply on the path that he's on right now, and the commission hears it, and they feel like, you know, yes, they have to deny the appeal, but this is a situation that they ought to look at doing something about. I mean, I remember the commission doing that periodically. They would instruct staff to look into that question and come back with a recommendation on whether the ordinance should be amended, you know, in some way to fit this situation. That's not unusual.
No, that's something that's within their purview.
Yeah, so I think if an appeal is taken, county commission will consider that larger issue in the course of deciding that appeal.
so I'm a little unclear. I like the direction to sound like it's going, but should I appeal to subdivide off and put the house in the back, or re-appeal the exact appeal I have now?
Well, you took an appeal of the decision, which I think was the right thing to do. We've denied the appeal. You have the right now to take that same appeal one step further and ask the Board of County Commissioners whether we have correctly denied the appeal. That's within the four corners of the process that you're in. But what I'm saying is, when you get to the county commission, if you choose to go there, they typically, in a situation, if they think that the ordinance is unfairly working against you, they typically look then at the question of, well, should we amend the ordinance to produce a more fair result? That's something that it's going to come up with the county commission. If they think the ordinance isn't working the way they think it should work for you, they will instruct staff to take a look at that issue. Is there a solution of amending the ordinance so that it will work for you? That's the best.
So the vote's been taken. I'm a little confused too. With my motion, which is passed, it's done. I wasn't insinuating that staff didn't do their due diligence in any way. What I was trying to do is make a motion to grant the appeal so that Mr. Allenbach could go to the county commission. Now, maybe I misunderstood the path that, we're,
Mr. Chair, let me just clarify. The initial motion was to grant the appeal, which would have essentially,
That's it.
that would have been done, but that failed. So the counter motion was to deny the appeal. Mr. Allenbaugh has the right to appeal your decision to the Board of County Commissioners, which he and I will discuss tomorrow if he wants to move forward with that.
okay.
Procedurally, he's got another 21 days to decide if we want to move forward. And the board will either deny the appeal, affirm, or grant the appeal, or do something in between, which is maybe direct staff to do something else. So we are done with that item,
Thank you.
and we'll be in contact.
Thank you for your time, sir.
Thank you, guys. I appreciate it very much. Have a good night.
You too.
Commissioners' matters? None. Planning matters.
Mr. Chair, you've got the informational packet. I don't anticipate having a meeting in the first meeting of August, but we do have a number of items that are getting close, so perhaps the second meeting of August, and then we may start meeting more regularly. I know we had a little bit of a lull, which was partly due to Corona, but partly just coincidental. So hopefully we probably will start meeting more regularly in the coming months.
Sounds good, Ryan. Attorneys' matters?
I have none.
Meeting is adjourned.
Thank you. Good night.
Thank you.
All right.
Good night.